Bring her here, officer. What's her status?
Unconscious. Looks like severe smoke inhalation. She was trapped on the 3rd floor.
In the market, a little girl discreetly signaled for help. A police officer saw and followed her to her house. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Officer Ethan Morales had walked these same grocery store aisles for 3 years. Every Tuesday and Thursday, same routine, checking in with Manager Pete, nodding to the regular customers, making sure everything stayed peaceful in this little corner of downtown. At 33, Ethan had learned that most days in police work were exactly like this. Quiet, predictable, safe. But something felt different today. He was passing aisle 12, the cereal section, when he almost missed her entirely. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, with blonde hair that needed brushing and a small pink dress that had seen better days. She was holding a worn teddy bear close to her chest, standing next to a tall man with dark hair and several tattoos covering his arms. Ethan almost kept walking. Then he saw her hand. The little girl was making a gesture, her palm facing out, thumb tucked in, fingers folded down slowly, then open again. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but Ethan's training kicked in immediately. He'd seen that signal in department briefings about child safety. It was a silent sign for help. His heart started beating faster. The man beside her seemed completely unaware, studying cereal boxes with an expression that showed no emotion. But the little girl's eyes, there was something in them that made Ethan's chest tighten. Not panic, not tears, but a quiet, desperate kind of hope, like she was throwing a message in a bottle into an ocean, praying someone would find it. Ethan pretended to examine his phone while watching them from the corner of his eye. The girl clutched her teddy bear tighter and glanced around nervously. When her eyes met his for just a second, he saw it clearly. She was scared. The man placed his hand on her shoulder, and she immediately looked down at the floor. "Come on, Lily," he said in a voice that sounded normal enough, but something about the way the little girl tensed up made Ethan's instinct scream. They started walking toward the front of the store. Ethan's mind raced. Was he seeing things that weren't there? The gesture could have been innocent. Kids play with their hands all the time. The man hadn't done anything wrong that Ethan could see. But that look in the little girl's eyes, the way she held that teddy bear like it was her only friend in the world, he followed at a distance, trying to look casual as he pretended to shop. They headed to the checkout line, and Ethan positioned himself where he could observe without being obvious. The little girl, Lily, the man had called her, never let go of her teddy bear. She kept glancing around like she was looking for something or someone. At the register, the cashier smiled at her. "What a pretty bear you have there, sweetie." Lily's face lit up for just a moment, the first genuine expression Ethan had seen from her. But before she could respond, the man placed his hand on her back, and her smile disappeared instantly. "She's shy," the man explained to the cashier, his tone friendly enough. Ethan noticed how quickly Lily had retreated into herself. As they finished paying and headed toward the exit, Ethan made a split-second decision that would change everything. Instead of letting them disappear into the parking lot, instead of convincing himself he was overreacting, he decided to trust what his heart was telling him. Something was very wrong here. And that little girl with the worn teddy bear and the silent cry for help was counting on someone, anyone, to notice. The automatic door slid open, and they stepped out into the afternoon sunlight. Ethan followed, his radio crackling softly on his shoulder, knowing that whatever happened next would define not just his day, but possibly this little girl's entire future. The parking lot felt different. As Ethan stepped outside, the same sun that had been shining peacefully just a minute ago now seemed harsh and urgent. He watched the man and little Lily walk toward a beat-up blue sedan parked near the back of the lot, away from the other cars. Ethan's mind drifted back to why he'd become a police officer in the first place. It was 8 years ago, right here in the same neighborhood. He'd been working as a store clerk then, just trying to make ends meet while figuring out his life. One evening, he'd witnessed an elderly man getting his wallet stolen right outside the pharmacy next door. Ethan had chased the thief 3 blocks, got the wallet back, and returned it to the grateful gentleman. "You should be a police officer, son," the old man had said tears in his eyes. The world needs more people who chase after what's right. Those words had changed Ethan's entire path. He'd enrolled in the police academy within 6 months, driven by the belief that he could make a real difference in people's lives. He wanted to be the person who showed up when others needed help most. But lately, that fire had been dimming. Most of his calls were routine, noise complaints, minor traffic accidents, paperwork that seemed to pile higher each week. The dreams he'd had of dramatic rescues and life-changing moments had slowly been replaced by the reality of small-town police work. Some days he wondered if he was making any difference at all. His partner Jake often joked, "Ethan, you take everything too seriously. Not every situation is a movie scene." Maybe Jake was right. Maybe Ethan did see drama where there wasn't any. Maybe that little girl was just playing with her hands, and the man was simply her father having a normal day at the grocery store. But as he watched them reach their car, something deep in his gut told him otherwise. The man opened the passenger door and gestured for Lily to get in. She hesitated for just a moment. Such a brief pause that most people would have missed it entirely. But Ethan saw it. He saw the way she looked back toward the store, like she was hoping someone might follow. The man's voice carried across the parking lot. "Lily, get in the car now." There was nothing threatening in his tone, nothing that would alarm a casual observer. But the little girl's shoulders tensed, and she climbed into the seat quickly, still clutching her teddy bear. Ethan felt torn between his training and his instincts. Protocol said he needed reasonable suspicion or evidence of wrongdoing to approach a citizen. A child making hand gestures and looking nervous wasn't enough for an official intervention. He could get in serious trouble for harassing innocent people based on a feeling. But what if his feeling was right? What if that little girl really did need help and he walked away because he was worried about following proper procedure? The blue sedan's engine started and Ethan realized he had about 30 seconds to make a decision that could change everything. He could return to his patrol route, file his report about the routine grocery store check, and go home to his quiet apartment like any other day. Or he could trust the voice in his head that had been screaming since the moment he saw Lily's silent signal. As the car began to back out of the parking space, Ethan made his choice. He jogged toward his patrol car, his radio in hand, trying to look casual but purposeful. He wasn't sure what he was going to do, but he knew he couldn't let them simply disappear. The elderly man's words from 8 years ago echoed in his mind. The world needs more people who chase after what's right. Today, Ethan was going to chase. The blue sedan pulled onto Main Street, and Ethan started his engine, keeping his distance but maintaining visual contact. His heart was pounding as he reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I'm following up on a possible situation involving a minor, requesting backup for observation only." He didn't know where this road would lead, but for the first time in months, Officer Ethan Morales felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The blue sedan moved through downtown traffic at a normal pace. Nothing suspicious about its driving pattern. Ethan stayed 3 cars behind, his palms sweating on the steering wheel. Every few seconds, he caught glimpses of Lily's blonde hair in the passenger seat. His radio crackled. "Unit 47, this is dispatch. What's the nature of your situation?" Ethan hesitated. How could he explain that a little girl had made a hand gesture that might mean nothing? That his gut feeling was screaming something was wrong, but he had no concrete evidence. "Dispatch! I observed a possible distress signal from a minor at the grocery store on Main Street. Following to ensure child safety." A pause. "Copy that, Unit 47. Sergeant Wells requests you return to the station for a briefing before proceeding." Ethan's heart sank. Sergeant Wells was thorough and by the book. If he lost sight of that car now, he might never see Lily again. The sedan turned left onto Maple Avenue, heading toward the older part of town where apartments clustered together like puzzle pieces. Ethan had to make a choice: follow orders or follow his instincts. He turned left. Unit 47, acknowledge return to station. The radio buzzed again. Ethan reached for the radio, then stopped. The sedan was slowing down, pulling into a parking spot in front of a rundown apartment complex called Sunset Manor. The irony of the name wasn't lost on him. The building looked like it hadn't seen a sunset worth celebrating in decades. He watched the man get out and walk around to Lily's side. She stepped out slowly, still holding her teddy bear, and looked around the parking lot. For just a moment, her eyes seemed to search the street, as if she knew someone might be watching. Then they disappeared into the building. Ethan sat in his patrol car, staring at the entrance, Unit 2B. He'd noticed from the mailboxes. Now what? He couldn't just knock on their door without cause. He couldn't sit here all day without explaining himself to his supervisor. His radio crackled again, more insistent this time. Unit 47, respond immediately. Ethan took a deep breath and picked up the radio. This is Unit 47. I'm at Sunset Manor Apartments. The subjects have entered the building, requesting permission to conduct a welfare check. Silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Unit 47, return to base immediately for debriefing with Sergeant Wells. That's an order. Ethan looked up at the second floor of the apartment building. Somewhere behind one of those windows, a little girl might be in trouble, or she might be perfectly safe with her father, playing with toys and having an afternoon snack. He started his engine and reluctantly drove away, but not before memorizing every detail he could about the building, the car, and the apartment number. Sometimes doing the right thing meant following orders, but sometimes it meant asking the right questions to the right people. Sergeant Wells was waiting. The police station felt colder than usual as Ethan walked through the familiar corridors. Officers nodded their usual greetings, but Ethan's mind was elsewhere, stuck on the image of Lily's small hand making that gesture and the way she clutched her teddy bear like a lifeline. Sergeant Patricia Wells was in her office reviewing reports. At 52, she commanded respect from everyone in the department. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her sharp blue eyes missed nothing. "Sit down, Morales," she said, without looking up from her paperwork. Ethan sat, trying to organize his thoughts. How could he explain what he'd seen without sounding like he was overreacting? "You want to tell me why you ignored a direct order to return to base?" Sergeant Wells finally asked, looking at him, her expression unreadable. "Sergeant, I witnessed something at the grocery store that concerned me. A child making what appeared to be a distress signal." Wells leaned back in her chair. "Describe exactly what you saw." Ethan recounted the events. The hand gesture, Lily's nervous behavior, the way she tensed when a man touched her shoulder. As he spoke, he watched Wells's expression carefully, looking for any sign that she thought he was crazy. "You know what that hand signal means?" Wells asked when he finished. "Yes, ma'am. We learned about it in the child safety briefing last year. It's supposed to be a silent way for people to ask for help." Wells was quiet for a long moment, staring out her office window. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than Ethan had ever heard it. 23 years ago, I was a young woman who needed help, but didn't know how to ask for it. Ethan looked up, surprised. Sergeant Wells rarely shared personal information. "I lived in a situation where I felt trapped, scared, but I couldn't find the words to tell anyone what was happening. I wished every day that someone would notice, would see the signs I was trying so desperately to give." She turned back to face him. "Eventually, I found my way out. It took years, but I got strong enough to leave. That experience is part of why I became a police officer, to be the person I needed when I was young." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "What should I do, Sergeant?" Wells pulled out a file folder. "First, you're going to learn everything there is to know about recognizing signs of distress in children. Then, we're going to figure out the right way to help this little girl, if she needs help." She handed him the folder. "Read these materials tonight. Tomorrow we'll discuss proper protocols for child welfare checks." "And Morales?" she added. "Yes, ma'am. Trust your instincts, but verify with facts. The combination of both is what makes a good officer great." As Ethan left her office with the folder under his arm, he felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Maybe he was exactly where he needed to be after all. That evening, Ethan sat in his small apartment with Sergeant Wells's file spread across his kitchen table. The materials were eye-opening and heartbreaking. Photos showing different hand signals, behavioral indicators, stories of children who had tried to communicate their need for help in subtle ways. One case study particularly struck him. A 7-year-old boy who had drawn pictures at school of himself looking sad, while other figures in his drawings appeared angry or threatening. His teacher had noticed a pattern and reported it, leading to an investigation that helped the child. Ethan's phone rang. It was his best friend Marcus, a social worker at the County Children's Services. "Hey, man, you sound stressed," Marcus said after Ethan's distracted greeting. "Everything okay?" Without thinking, Ethan found himself describing the events of the day. Marcus listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "You did the right thing by following up," Marcus said when Ethan finished. "Too many people see something that doesn't feel right and convince themselves it's not their business." "But what if I'm wrong?" Ethan asked. "What if it's just a normal family and I'm creating problems where there aren't any?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "In my job, I see the results when people don't speak up. Trust me, it's better to check and be wrong than to stay silent and be right about something terrible." After hanging up, Ethan continued reading until late into the night. He learned about trauma responses in children, how fear could make them appear withdrawn or overly compliant. He read about the importance of building trust slowly, never rushing or pressuring a child to speak. The next morning, he arrived at work early, hoping to catch Sergeant Wells before the day's shift began. She was already in her office, reviewing overnight reports. "I read everything," Ethan said, showing her the file. "I understand the protocols better now." Wells nodded approvingly. "Good. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to request a routine community welfare check at that address. Completely legitimate. Completely by the book." She pulled out a form. "We'll go together this afternoon. You'll observe and learn proper procedure. If there's something to be concerned about, we'll see it. If not, we'll have done our due diligence." Ethan felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. What should I expect? Expect to keep an open mind. Expect to look for facts, not confirm suspicions. And expect that sometimes the most important part of our job is simply letting people know that someone cares enough to check. As they prepared for the afternoon visit, Ethan thought about Lily and her teddy bear. In a few hours, he'd know if his instincts had been right. At 2:30 p.m., Ethan and Sergeant Wells pulled up to Sunset Manor Apartments. The building looked even more worn in daylight. Peeling paint, cracked sidewalks, and windows covered with mismatched curtains. But it was home to dozens of families, and Ethan reminded himself not to judge based on appearances. "Remember," Wells said as they walked toward the entrance, "we're here for a routine community check. We're friendly, professional, and observant." They climbed the stairs to the second floor. The hallway smelled like old carpet and cleaning supplies. Apartment 2B was at the end of the corridor. Its door was painted a faded blue that matched the sedan from yesterday. Wells knocked firmly, but not aggressively. "Hello. This is Sergeant Wells with the Metro Police Department. Routine community wellness check." Footsteps approached him inside, then stopped. A long pause followed. "Just a minute." A man's voice called out. It was the same voice Ethan had heard in the grocery store. When the door finally opened, the man from yesterday stood before them. Up close, Ethan could see he was probably in his late 30s with tired eyes and callous hands that suggested he worked in construction or manual labor. "Officers, is there a problem?" the man asked. His tone was polite but cautious. "No problem at all, sir," Wells replied with a professional smile. "I'm Sergeant Wells, and this is Officer Morales. We're conducting routine wellness checks in the neighborhood. Just making sure everyone's doing okay, seeing if there are any community concerns we should know about." The man who introduced himself as Dante Briggs seemed to relax slightly. "That's nice of you. Everything's fine here, though." "Wonderful to hear," Wells said. "We've had some reports of suspicious activity in the area, so we're just touching base with residents. Are you living here alone, Mr. Briggs?" Dante hesitated for just a moment. "No, I'm helping take care of my friend's daughter temporarily. Her mom had to go out of town for work." "That's very kind of you. Is the little one here now?" "We like to make sure all the children in the neighborhood know they can come to us if they ever need help." "She's taking a nap right now. Doesn't like to be disturbed," Dante said quickly. Ethan noticed that Dante hadn't invited them in, and he was blocking the doorway with his body. Through the gap, Ethan could see a small living room with a couch and television, but no signs of child-friendly items like toys or colorful decorations. Of course, we wouldn't want to wake her. Wells said understandingly. What's her name? We like to keep track of all the kids in our patrol area. Lily, Dante said quickly. Her name's Lily. And when do you expect her mother to return? Wells asked casually. Dante's eyes shifted slightly. Soon. Very soon. Look, officers, I appreciate you checking on the neighborhood, but everything's really fine here. Wells smiled and handed him her business card. Absolutely, Mr. Briggs. We appreciate your time. If you or Lily ever need anything, please don't hesitate to call. As they walked back down the hallway, Ethan felt frustrated. They'd learned very little, and he hadn't seen Lily at all. That didn't tell us much, he whispered to Wells as they reached the stairs. It told us plenty, she replied quietly. Now we wait and watch. The next few days were the longest of Ethan's career. He drove past Sunset Manor during every patrol, hoping to catch a glimpse of Lily, but the blue sedan remained parked and silent. No signs of the little girl who had made such an impression on him. He found himself questioning everything. Maybe Dante really was just helping a friend. Maybe Lily was simply a shy child who felt uncomfortable around strangers. Maybe his police training had made him see danger where there was only kindness. On Thursday evening, Ethan sat in his apartment staring at his dinner, without eating. The case files Sergeant Wells had given him were spread across his coffee table, and he'd read them so many times he could recite the warning signs from memory. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister, Sarah. How's work? You've been quiet lately. Ethan stared at the message for a long time before responding, thinking about whether he was making a difference. Sarah called immediately. What's going on, big brother? Ethan found himself telling her about Lily, about the uncertainty, about feeling like maybe he wasn't cut out for police work after all. Remember when we were kids? Sarah said softly. And you found that injured bird in our backyard? Ethan smiled despite his mood. He'd been 8 years old when he discovered a small sparrow with a broken wing. While other kids might have ignored it or been squeamish, you carefully picked it up and begged our parents to take it to a veterinarian. You spent your allowance money on that bird. Sarah continued. You visited it every day until it healed. And when it was time to release it, you cried because you were so happy it could fly again. That was different, Ethan said. The bird couldn't tell me what was wrong, but I could see it needed help. Exactly, Sarah said. And sometimes people can't tell you what's wrong either, but you've always been able to see when someone needs help. Don't stop trusting that part of yourself. After hanging up, Ethan picked up one of the case studies again. It was about a police officer in Oregon who had noticed a child behaving strangely at a playground. The officer had followed proper protocols, conducted wellness checks, and eventually discovered that the child was being neglected by a caregiver who wasn't the parent. The key had been persistence and patience. Ethan looked out his window toward the direction of Sunset Manor. Somewhere in that building, a little girl might be hoping that someone remembered her silent signal for help. Tomorrow, he decided, he would find a way to see Lily again. But this time, he would be smarter about it. Friday morning brought unexpected hope. Ethan was grabbing coffee at Maria's Diner, a small restaurant 2 blocks from Sunset Manor, when he overheard a conversation at the next table. Saw them at the laundromat yesterday. An elderly woman was saying to her companion, strange man with a little blonde girl. She seemed so quiet, just sat in the corner the whole time. Ethan's ears perked up. He turned slightly in his booth, trying to listen without being obvious. Was the little one okay? The second woman asked. Hard to say. She had this worn-out teddy bear she wouldn't let go of. Reminded me of my granddaughter when she was that age, except my granddaughter would have been chattering away. This little girl didn't say a word the entire time. The man seemed, I don't know, impatient with her. The first woman lowered her voice. Not mean exactly, but like he didn't really want to be taking care of a child. Ethan's heart started racing. This had to be Lily and Dante. He waited until the women finished their conversation and were preparing to leave, then approached their table politely. Excuse me, ladies. I'm Officer Morales with the Metro Police. I couldn't help overhearing your conversation about the little girl at the laundromat. Could you tell me more about what you observed? The first woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Chun, looked concerned. Is the child in some kind of trouble, officer? We're just following up on some community concerns. Ethan said carefully. Any information you could share would be helpful. Mrs. Chin described seeing Lily and Dante at Suds and Bubbles' laundromat on Wednesday afternoon. She'd noticed them because the little girl had been so unusually quiet and still while the man did laundry. Most children that age are curious about everything. They want to watch the washing machine spin, ask questions, get restless. But this little one just sat in that plastic chair, holding her bear like she was afraid to move. Did you notice anything else? Ethan asked. Well, Mrs. Chin looked at her friend, then back at Ethan. I've been a kindergarten teacher for 30 years, and I know how children behave when they're comfortable versus when they're not. This little girl, she looked like she was trying very hard to be invisible. Ethan thanked the women and immediately called Sergeant Wells. We need to visit that laundromat, he told her. If they're regulars there, the employees might have seen something. An hour later, Ethan and Wells were talking to Tommy, the 19-year-old manager of Suds and Bubbles. Oh, yeah, I remember them, Tommy said. The guy comes in every week or so. Usually has the little girl with him. She's really quiet. Never heard her say a single word. Does anything seem unusual about their visits? Wells asked. Tommy thought for a moment. The man always pays exact change like he's been counting his money carefully. And the little girl, she always sits in the same chair by the window. Sometimes I see her looking outside like she's watching for someone. As they left the laundromat, Ethan felt a familiar surge of determination. They were building a picture now, gathering facts instead of just relying on instincts. Good work, Wells said as they got back in the patrol car. Now we have witnesses who can confirm the child's behavior patterns. That's evidence we can work with. Monday morning brought a new development. Ethan arrived at the station to find Sergeant Wells waiting with a woman he'd never seen before. She was in her late 30s, professionally dressed with kind eyes and an air of quiet authority. Morales, meet Vanessa Reyes, Wells said. She's a social worker with Child Protective Services. I've briefed her on our situation. Vanessa shook Ethan's hand firmly. Sergeant Wells tells me you're the officer who first noticed this little girl's distress signal. Yes, ma'am, Ethan said, feeling suddenly nervous. I hope I wasn't overreacting. Vanessa smiled. Officer, in my 15 years doing this work, I've learned that the people who worry about overreacting are usually the ones whose instincts we should trust the most. She opened a folder on Wells's desk. I've been researching the situation. There's no record of a Lily Monroe in any of our local school systems. No medical records at area hospitals or clinics. No social security number registered to that address. Ethan felt his stomach drop. What does that mean? It means this child is essentially invisible to the system, Vanessa said gravely. Either her paperwork is being kept somewhere else, or she wasn't registered. Either way, the implications are serious. What's our next step? Wells asked. Vanessa pulled out several official forms. We're going to conduct a formal welfare check. This time we have legal grounds to request to see the child and verify her well-being. If Mr. Briggs is legitimately caring for her, he'll have documentation to prove it. And if he doesn't, Ethan asked, then we'll have grounds for further investigation, Vanessa said. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The goal is to ensure the child's safety, not to assume wrongdoing. As they planned their approach, Ethan found himself impressed by Vanessa's thorough professionalism. She explained the legal requirements, the importance of following proper procedures, and the rights of both the child and the adult in question. I have to ask, Ethan said, how often do these situations turn out to be legitimate? Vanessa was quiet for a moment, more often than you might think. Sometimes people are helping in unofficial ways, and it's all perfectly innocent. But sometimes, she looked directly at him, sometimes a police officer's gut instinct is the only thing standing between a child and a very bad situation. You acted on what you couldn't see, she continued. Most people only respond to obvious signs of distress. The fact that you noticed something subtle, something others might have missed, already makes you different. As they prepared to return to Sunset Manor, this time with legal authority and professional backup, Ethan felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. Today, they would finally get answers. The plan was simple but thorough. Vanessa would take the lead as the official representative of Child Protective Services, with Wells and Ethan providing law enforcement support. They had documentation, legal authority, and clear protocols to follow. Remember, Vanessa said as they sat in a patrol car outside Sunset Manor, our primary concern is a child's immediate safety and well-being. We're not here to make accusations or judgments. We're here to gather facts. Ethan studied the building again. In the daylight, he could see children's toys scattered in some of the other apartment balconies, bikes leaning against railings, signs of normal family life. But the balcony outside, to be remained empty and sterile. What exactly were you asked for? Ethan wanted to make sure he understood the procedure completely. First, I'll request to see Lily to verify her well-being, Vanessa explained. Then, I'll ask for documentation proving Mr. Briggs has legal authority to care for her, guardianship papers, a notarized letter from her mother, something official. And if he refuses, Wells added, then we have grounds for a more intensive investigation. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. As they walked up the stairs to the second floor, Ethan noticed details he'd missed before. The hallway was cleaner than he'd initially thought, and he could hear sounds of normal apartment life. A television playing cartoons, someone talking on the phone, the smell of cooking food. When they reached apartment 2B, Vanessa knocked with authority, but not aggression. Mr. Briggs, this is Vanessa Reyes with Child Protective Services. I need to speak with you about Lily Monroe. The silence from inside stretched longer than before. Finally, footsteps approached the door. What do you want? Dante's voice was cautious, less friendly than during their previous visit. Mr. Briggs, I need to conduct a welfare check on the minor child in your care. This is a standard procedure. May I come in? Another long pause. Do you have a warrant? Dante asked, wary. Sir, I don't need a warrant to conduct a child welfare check when there are concerns about a minor's safety. I do need to see Lily and verify that you have proper authorization to care for her. The door opened, but only a few inches. Dante appeared in the gap, his expression wary. She's fine. She's sleeping, Dante said. Then we can wait for her to wake up, Vanessa replied. Or we can speak to her very quietly. This won't take long. Ethan could see Dante's internal struggle. The man looked tired, stressed, like someone who'd been carrying a heavy burden for too long. Look, Dante said finally, I'm just trying to help her mother. She asked me to watch Lily for a while. I never signed up for all this official stuff. Where's her mother now? Vanessa asked gently. I'm not sure. She said she'd be back. But that was... Dante trailed off. How long ago, Mr. Briggs? The question hung in the air. When Dante finally answered, his voice was barely above a whisper. 3 weeks. The weight of Dante's admission settled over them like a heavy blanket. 3 weeks. A 5-year-old girl had been without her mother for 3 weeks in the care of someone who clearly wasn't prepared for the responsibility. Mr. Briggs, Vanessa said, her voice remaining gentle but firm, I really do need to see Lily now. Can you please let us in? Dante's shoulders sagged as if he'd been holding up the world and finally had to set it down. Slowly, he opened the door wider and stepped aside. The apartment was small, but surprisingly clean. A brown couch sat against one wall facing an old television. The kitchen was tidy with dishes neatly stacked in a drying rack. But what struck Ethan immediately was how empty it felt. There were no children's drawings on the refrigerator, no colorful toys scattered around, no signs that a little girl lived here. Lily, Dante called softly toward a closed door at the end of a short hallway. Some people want to meet you. The door opened slowly, and there she was, the same blonde-haired little girl from the grocery store, still clutching the same worn teddy bear. She was wearing different clothes, a simple yellow t-shirt and blue jeans, but her expression was exactly the same, cautious, watchful, like a small animal that had learned to be very careful about sudden movements. Vanessa crouched down to Lily's eye level, maintaining a respectful distance. Hi there, Lily. My name is Vanessa. I work with children, and I just wanted to make sure you're doing okay. Lily looked from Vanessa to Ethan to Sergeant Wells, then back to Dante. She didn't speak, but she nodded slightly. That's a beautiful teddy bear. Vanessa continued in a warm voice. What's his name? For the first time, Lily's expression softened just a little. Mr. Buttons, she whispered so quietly they had to strain to hear her. Mr. Buttons is a very good name, Vanessa said with a genuine smile. Has he been taking good care of you? Lily nodded again, hugging the bear tighter. Ethan watched the interaction carefully. The little girl seemed tired, and there were dark circles under her eyes that suggested she hadn't been sleeping well, but she didn't appear frightened of Dante. More like she was uncertain about everything and everyone. Lily, Vanessa said gently, do you remember your mommy? The change in Lily's expression was immediate and heartbreaking. Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked down at her feet. Mommy went away, she said in that same whisper-quiet voice. Did she tell you where she was going? Vanessa asked. Lily shook her head. She was crying. Then she left. Dante shifted uncomfortably. Look, I told you I'm just trying to help until her mom comes back. I didn't know what else to do. Sergeant Wells spoke for the first time since they'd entered. Mr. Briggs, can you tell us exactly what happened? How did you end up caring for Lily? Dante ran his hands through his hair, looking overwhelmed. Tasha, that's her mom. She's been my neighbor for about 6 months. She seemed like she was having a hard time. You know, a single mom working 2 jobs. Always looked exhausted. He glanced at Lily, who was listening intently while pretending to whisper to her teddy bear. About a month ago, she started asking if I could watch Lily sometimes when she had to work late. I said, sure. I mean, the kid's quiet and she mostly just sits and plays with that bear. It wasn't a big deal. What changed? Vanessa asked. 3 weeks ago, Tasha came to my door in the middle of the night. She was upset. Really upset. She had a suitcase and she was crying, and she asked if I could watch Lily for just a few days while she figured some things out. Dante's voice grew quieter. She said she had to leave town for a while, that it wasn't safe for her to stay. She promised she'd call, that she'd be back soon. Has she called? Wells asked. Once, about a week ago. She said she was okay but needed more time. That was it. Ethan studied Lily during this conversation. The little girl was very still, very quiet, but he could see her processing every word. She understood more than the adults might realize. When Dante mentioned her mother, she hugged Mr. Buttons tighter. When he talked about her daily routine, she looked down at her feet. Lily, Ethan said gently, speaking directly to her for the first time. Do you remember me? I saw you at the grocery store a few days ago. Lily looked up at him. For just a moment, her eyes widened with recognition. She nodded slowly. You were holding Mr. Buttons then, too, weren't you? He asked. Another nod. Are you taking good care of each other? This time, Lily's response was barely audible, but unmistakable. He's all I have left. The words hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. In that simple sentence, a 5-year-old had summarized exactly how alone and scared she felt. Vanessa exchanged meaningful looks with Wells and Ethan. They all understood that whatever happened next, Lily's world was about to change again. The room fell silent after Lily's heartbreaking words. Vanessa knelt down closer to the little girl, her professional composure momentarily shaken by the raw honesty of a child who had learned too young that the world could be unpredictable and scary. Lily, sweetheart, Vanessa said softly, Mr. Buttons is very lucky to have you taking care of him. And you know what? There are people who want to take care of you, too. Lily looked up with those wide, uncertain eyes, like Dante. Dante shifted uncomfortably, and Ethan could see the weight of responsibility sitting heavily on the man's shoulders. Whatever his intentions, he was clearly in over his head. Mr. Briggs, Vanessa said, standing up, I need to ask you some more specific questions. Do you have any written documentation from Tasha giving you permission to care for Lily? Dante shook his head. She was in such a hurry that night. She just said she trusted me and that she'd be back soon. Do you know Tasha's full name? Her social security number? Any emergency contacts? Her name is Tasha Monroe. I don't know about the other stuff. We weren't close friends or anything, just neighbors who helped each other out sometimes. Sergeant Wells stepped forward. Mr. Briggs, without proper documentation, you don't have legal authority to make decisions for this child. That puts both you and Lily in a difficult position. I know that now, Dante said, his voice strained. But what was I supposed to do? Let a 5-year-old stay by herself? I thought her mom would be back by now. Ethan watched this exchange while keeping one eye on Lily. The little girl was listening to every word, and he could see her growing more anxious as the conversation continued. She seemed to sense that another big change was coming. Vanessa pulled out her phone. I need to make some calls to see if we can locate Tasha Monroe. In the meantime, we need to discuss Lily's immediate care situation. What does that mean? Dante asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. It means, Vanessa said gently, that until we can locate her mother and verify proper guardianship arrangements, Lily needs to be placed in temporary protective custody. Lily's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. Her face crumpled and she clutched Mr. Buttons so tightly that Ethan worried she might damage the already worn teddy bear. No, she whispered, then louder. No, I want to stay with Dante. I want my mommy. Dante looked stricken. Despite the complicated situation, it was clear he had grown attached to the little girl over the past 3 weeks. Hey, Lily, it's okay, he said, kneeling down to her level. These people just want to make sure you're safe. But you keep me safe, Lily said through tears. You make me sandwiches and let me watch cartoons. The innocence of her words was devastating. This little girl had already lost her mother, and now she was about to lose the only stability she had left, even if that stability was imperfect. Vanessa's phone buzzed with a return call. She stepped into the hallway to take it privately, leaving Wells, Ethan, and Dante to comfort a crying 5-year-old. Lily, Ethan said, crouching down beside Dante. Do you remember when you saw me at the grocery store? You made a special sign with your hand. Lily nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. That sign told me that you needed help. You were very brave to do that. I was scared, Lily admitted. I didn't know if Mommy was coming back, and I didn't know how to ask for help. Dante looked surprised. Is that why you did that thing with your hand? I thought you were just playing. A nice police lady taught us at daycare, Lily explained. She said if we ever needed help but couldn't talk, we could make that sign, and maybe someone would see it. Ethan felt a surge of validation mixed with sadness. His instincts had been right, but the situation was more complex than he'd initially thought. Lily hadn't been in immediate danger with Dante, but she had been scared and uncertain, essentially unaccounted for without anyone knowing. Vanessa returned from her phone call, her expression serious but not entirely grim. I have some news, she announced to the room. Everyone looked at her expectantly, including Lily, who was still sniffling but trying to be brave. The good news is that we found Tasha Monroe, Vanessa said. She's been staying at a women's shelter about 2 hours north of here in Riverside County. Dante's relief was visible. She's okay. She's coming back. She's physically safe, Vanessa said carefully. But the situation is complicated. According to the shelter coordinator, Tasha arrived there 3 weeks ago seeking emergency housing. She told them she had to leave her previous living situation quickly for her own safety. What about Lily? Ethan asked. Did she tell them about her daughter? Vanessa's expression grew more serious. That's where it gets complicated. Tasha told the shelter that her daughter was safe with someone she trusted, but couldn't provide more details. The shelter assumed this meant family members or legal guardians. So she knew Lily was with me? Dante said, sounding both relieved and confused. Yes, but she also told them she was afraid to make contact because she thought she was being followed. She's been essentially hiding for 3 weeks, terrified to reach out to anyone from her previous life. The room absorbed this information. Lily, who had been listening intently despite her tears, spoke up in a small voice. Mommy was scared of the angry man. All the adults turned to look at her. This was the first time she'd mentioned anyone else being involved in the situation. What angry man, sweetheart? Vanessa asked gently. The one who made Mommy cry. Lily said, hugging Mr. Buttons. He was loud and made her scared. That's why she had to go away. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. Tasha hadn't abandoned her daughter. She'd been fleeing from someone who had made her feel unsafe. And in her fear and desperation, she'd made the difficult decision to leave Lily with someone she trusted while she tried to get help. Lily, Vanessa said, "Your mommy didn't want to leave you. She was trying to protect you. Is she coming back now?" Lily asked hopefully. Vanessa looked at Wells and Ethan before answering. "We're going to call her right now and arrange for you to talk to her, and then we're going to figure out the best way to bring your family back together safely." For the first time since they'd arrived, Lily's expression brightened. She looked down at Mr. Buttons and whispered, "Did you hear that? Mommy's coming back." As Vanessa began dialing the shelter's number, Ethan realized that his initial instinct in the grocery store had been right, but not in the way he'd expected. Lily had needed help. Not rescue from immediate danger, but assistance in reconnecting with a mother who loved her but had been too frightened and overwhelmed to know how to ask for help herself. The real work was just beginning. The phone call that would change everything was about to happen. Vanessa had contacted the shelter and arranged for Tasha to be available to speak with them. The anticipation in the small apartment was almost tangible as everyone waited. Lily sat on the edge of the couch, still clutching Mr. Buttons, her legs swinging nervously. Dante paced by the window, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. Ethan and Sergeant Wells positioned themselves where they could observe without being intrusive. "Before we make this call," Vanessa said, addressing everyone in the room, "I want to explain what's going to happen next. This conversation will help us understand the full situation, but there are still legal procedures we'll need to follow." She looked directly at Lily. "Sweetheart, you're going to hear your mommy's voice, and that's wonderful, but there might be some grown-up decisions that need to be made to keep everyone safe." Lily nodded solemnly, though Ethan could see she didn't fully understand the implications. Vanessa dialed the number and put the phone on speaker. After a few rings, a voice came through that made Lily gasp with recognition. "Hello, this is Tasha. Mommy." Lily called out before anyone could stop her. There was a moment of stunned silence from the other end of the phone, then the sound of crying. "Lily, baby, is that really you? Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay, Mommy," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "I missed you so much. Mr. Buttons missed you, too." "Oh, sweetheart, I miss you more than all the stars in the sky." Tasha's voice was thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry I had to go away. I'm so sorry I left you." Dante stepped closer to the phone. "Tasha, it's me, Dante. Lily's been safe. I've been taking care of her, like you asked." "Dante? Oh, thank God. I've been so worried, but I was afraid to call. I didn't know if it was safe to contact anyone from before." Vanessa gently took control of the conversation. "Miss Monroe, this is Vanessa Reyes with Child Protective Services. I'm here with Officer Morales and Sergeant Wells from the Metro Police Department. We need to discuss your situation and make sure we can reunite you and Lily safely." There was a pause before Tasha responded, her voice now cautious. "Am I in trouble? I know I should have filled out paperwork or something, but I had to leave so quickly." "Ms. Monroe," Sergeant Wells interjected kindly, "you're not in trouble. We understand you were in a difficult situation. Can you tell us what made you feel you had to leave so suddenly?" Tasha took a shaky breath. "My boyfriend, Marcus. He'd been getting more and more controlling, more angry. That last night, he scared me really badly. He said things that made me think he might hurt me, or worse, hurt Lily." Lily looked confused. "Who's Marcus, Mommy?" "Just someone who wasn't very nice, baby. That's why Mommy had to go away for a while." Ethan found himself thinking about all the assumptions he'd made over the past week. The reality was so much more complex than the scenarios he'd imagined. Tasha wasn't a neglectful mother. She was a young woman who had made an impossible choice between staying and potentially putting her daughter in danger, or leaving temporarily to seek help. "Ms. Monroe," Vanessa continued, "the shelter coordinator mentioned you were afraid you were being followed. Do you still feel unsafe?" "I think so. Marcus has been trying to find me. He called the shelter twice this week claiming to be a family member. The staff didn't give him any information, but it scared me." Dante spoke up again. Tasha, he came by your old apartment about a week ago asking where you were. I told him I didn't know anything. Tasha's voice rose with alarm. Did he see Lily? No, she was inside. I didn't let him in. Ms. Monroe, Sergeant Wells said, we can help you file a restraining order against Marcus and ensure your safety. But right now our immediate concern is reuniting you with your daughter through proper legal channels. What does that mean? Tasha asked. Vanessa explained the temporary custody situation and the procedures they would need to follow. The good news is that this can be resolved relatively quickly, since you're Lily's biological mother, and there's no indication of neglect or harm. We just need to establish legal documentation and ensure you have a safe place to live. The shelter said I could stay for up to 90 days. Tasha said hopefully. That's a good start, Vanessa replied. Can you travel here tomorrow? We can arrange a reunification and help you file the necessary protective orders. Yes, Tasha said immediately. Yes, I can be there tomorrow. I've been wanting to come back for Lily every single day. Lily had been listening to this entire conversation with wide eyes. Mommy, are you really coming back tomorrow? I promise, baby girl. Nothing in the world could keep me away from you any longer. Can I bring Mr. Buttons to meet you? Tasha's laugh came through the phone, lighter than any sound they'd heard from her so far. Mr. Buttons and I have some catching up to do. Has he been taking good care of you? He helped me not be scared, Lily said seriously. And Dante made me sandwiches and let me watch the princess movies. Thank you, Dante, Tasha said, her voice full of genuine gratitude. I can never repay you for keeping her safe. Dante looked embarrassed, but pleased. She's a good kid. It wasn't a burden. As they wrapped up the call and made specific arrangements for the next day, Ethan felt a profound sense of satisfaction. His instinct in the grocery store had led to this moment. A mother and daughter who would be reunited. A situation that would be resolved safely and legally. But he also realized that tomorrow would bring new challenges. Reuniting Lily and Tasha was just the beginning of rebuilding their lives. The next morning arrived with a mixture of excitement and nervousness that seemed to fill every corner of the Child Protective Services office. Lily sat in a colorful waiting room, still clutching Mr. Buttons, her legs swinging from a chair that was too big for her. She had barely slept the night before, asking Dante every few minutes if it was time to see her mommy yet. Ethan and Sergeant Wells arrived early to ensure everything went smoothly. Vanessa had spent the morning coordinating with the shelter and preparing the necessary paperwork for the reunification process. How are you feeling, Lily? Ethan asked, sitting down in a small chair next to her. My tummy feels funny, she said honestly. Happy funny, but scared funny too. That makes sense, Ethan said gently. Sometimes when something really good is about to happen, we feel excited and nervous at the same time. Lily nodded seriously. Mr. Buttons is nervous, too. He hasn't seen Mommy in a long time. Dante paced near the window, checking his watch repeatedly. Despite the circumstances that had brought them together, it was clear he had grown genuinely fond of Lily over the past 3 weeks. The thought of saying goodbye was affecting him more than he'd expected. Dante, Lily called to him. Will I still see you sometimes? The question caught him off guard. I don't know, kiddo. That's up to your mom. I want to see you sometimes, Lily said matter-of-factly. You make good grilled cheese sandwiches. A car pulled into the parking lot outside, and Vanessa looked up from her paperwork. That should be them now. Through the window, they could see a social worker from the shelter getting out of the driver's seat. The passenger door opened, and a young woman stepped out. Even from a distance, there was no mistaking the family resemblance. Tasha Monroe had the same blonde hair as her daughter, though it was pulled back in a ponytail, and she moved with the careful posture of someone who had been carrying worry as a constant companion. Lily pressed her face to the window. Is that Mommy? Yes, sweetheart, Vanessa said. That's your mommy. The next few moments felt like they lasted forever and passed in an instant all at once. Tasha entered the building with the shelter social worker, completed the check-in process, and was led toward the reunification room. Lily stood up so quickly she nearly dropped Mr. Buttons. Her eyes were fixed on the door, and Ethan could see her whole body trembling with anticipation. When the door finally opened and Tasha stepped through, The reunion was everything Ethan had hoped it would be, and more emotional than he had prepared himself for. Mommy. Lily ran across the room faster than anyone had seen her move since this whole situation began. Tasha dropped to her knees just in time to catch her daughter in a hug that seemed to encompass weeks of worry, fear, and love. Both of them were crying, but they were the kind of tears that wash away pain rather than cause it. My baby girl, Tasha whispered, holding Lily so tightly it seemed like she never intended to let go again. I missed you so much. I'm so sorry I had to leave you. It's okay, Mommy, Lily said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. I knew you would come back. Mr. Buttons knew, too. Tasha pulled back just enough to look at the worn teddy bear that had been her daughter's constant companion. Hello, Mr. Buttons, she said seriously, as if greeting an old friend. Thank you for taking such good care of my little girl. Lily giggled through her tears. He missed you too, Mommy. He told me stories about you when I was scared at night. The adults in the room watched this reunion with a mixture of professional satisfaction and personal emotion. Even Sergeant Wells, who had seen many difficult situations over her career, had to wipe her eyes discreetly. But as beautiful as the moment was, Ethan could see that both mother and daughter were different than they had been 3 weeks ago. Tasha looked older, more cautious, like someone who had learned hard lessons about trust and safety. Lily seemed more aware of how quickly things could change, more grateful for simple things like hugs and familiar voices. Lily, Tasha said, still holding her daughter close, I want you to meet someone. This is Ms. Garcia from the shelter where I've been staying. She helped me feel safe so I could come back to you. Lily looked at the social worker shyly, but politely. Thank you for helping my mommy. You're very welcome, sweetie, Ms. Garcia replied. Your mommy talks about you all the time. She's very proud of you. As the formal reunification process continued with paperwork and procedures, Lily never strayed more than arm's length from her mother. When it came time to acknowledge Dante's role in caring for her, the moment was bittersweet. Mr. Briggs, Tasha said, extending her hand to shake his. I can never thank you enough for what you did. You kept my daughter safe when I couldn't. Dante looked uncomfortable with the gratitude. I just did what anyone would do. No, Tasha said firmly. You did what someone with a good heart would do. Not everyone would have stepped up like that. Lily tugged on Dante's sleeve. Dante, can you visit us sometimes? I want to show you my room when we get a new house. Dante looked at Tasha questioningly. She nodded with a smile. Of course, you'll always be welcome in our lives. As they prepared to leave the office together, Tasha, Lily, and Mr. Buttons, Vanessa pulled Ethan aside. You should feel very proud, she said. Your instincts and persistence made this reunion possible. Ethan watched Lily skip alongside her mother toward the exit, chattering excitedly about everything that had happened while they were apart. I just noticed a little girl who needed help, he said. That's exactly the point, Vanessa replied. Most people wouldn't have noticed, and even fewer would have acted on it. As the family disappeared through the doors, heading toward their new beginning, Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in his police work for a long time, the absolute certainty that he had made a difference in someone's life. But their story wasn't quite finished yet. 3 months later, Officer Ethan Morales found himself driving through a familiar neighborhood on his morning patrol. The leaves were turning golden, and there was a crisp feeling in the air that promised autumn was settling in for good. As he turned onto Maple Street, he noticed something that made him slow down and smile. A small yellow school bus was stopped in front of a modest apartment complex. Not Sunset Manor, but a newer building with bright blue trim and small flower boxes on the balconies. The bus doors opened and out stepped a little girl with blonde hair and neat pigtails wearing a pink backpack that looked almost as big as she was. It was Lily Monroe, and she was going to school for the very first time. Ethan parked his patrol car at a respectful distance and watched as Lily walked up the path to her new home. She moved with the confidence of a child who knew she was safe and loved. At the front door, she turned and waved the bus driver before disappearing inside. The past 3 months had been transformative for the Monroe family. Tasha had successfully obtained a restraining order against Marcus, who had been arrested for violating the order when he tried to contact her at the shelter. She'd found a job at a local healthcare clinic and, with assistance from various community programs, had been able to secure their new apartment. Lily had flourished in her new environment. She started seeing a child counselor who specialized in helping kids process difficult experiences. And slowly but surely, she'd begun to open up about her feelings. The silent, watchful little girl from the grocery store had gradually transformed into a more typical 5-year-old. Curious, talkative, and full of questions about everything. Ethan's radio crackled with a routine call, but before he could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Vanessa Reyes. Check your email when you get a chance. Something special. Curious. Ethan pulled out his phone and opened his email app. The message from Vanessa had an attachment, a photo that made his throat tighten with emotion. It was a drawing clearly made by a child's hand with crayons and markers. The picture showed a grocery store with tall shelves, and in the center were two figures, a little girl with yellow hair holding a brown teddy bear, and a tall man in a blue uniform with a kind smile. At the bottom, in carefully practiced letters, someone had helped Lily write to Officer Ethan. Thank you for seeing me. Love, Lily and Mr. Buttons. Ethan stared at the drawing for a long moment, remembering that day in aisle 12 when he'd almost kept walking. He thought about all the small decisions that had led to this moment. His choice to trust his instincts, Sergeant Wells's wisdom and support, Vanessa's professional expertise, even Dante's willingness to help a neighbor in need. His radio crackled again, and this time he responded to the call. But as he drove toward his assignment, Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Absolute certainty that he was exactly where he belonged, doing exactly what he was meant to do. A week later, Sergeant Wells approached his desk. Morales, I have something for you. She handed him an official-looking envelope with a police department seal. What's this? Ethan asked, though he had a feeling he already knew. The Monroe case has been cited as an example of proactive policing and interagency cooperation. Good work, Wells said with a rare smile. Ethan opened the envelope and read the commendation letter, but his mind wandered to that drawing still pinned to his refrigerator at home. No official recognition could compare the knowledge that a little girl was safe, happy, and starting kindergarten because he'd paid attention to a silent cry for help. Thank you, Sergeant, he said. But honestly, I feel like I got more out of this than I gave. Wells nodded knowingly. That's usually how it works when you do something that matters. As autumn deepened into winter, Ethan occasionally drove past Lily's school during dismissal time. He never stopped or interfered. There was no need to, but he liked seeing her among the other children, laughing and playing like any normal 5-year-old should. One particularly cold December afternoon, as he was driving past the school, something caught his eye. A little girl was standing by the fence, watching the cars go by with an expression that seemed familiar. She looked scared and alone, clutching a small backpack like it was her only friend. Ethan slowed down and studied the scene more carefully. The girl was making small gestures with her hand. Subtle, easy to miss, but unmistakable to someone who knew what to look for. It was a silent signal for help. Ethan pulled over and reached for his radio, his heart beating with familiar purpose. Dispatch! This is Unit 47. I'd like to request backup for a possible child welfare check at Lincoln Elementary School. As he got out of the patrol car and walked toward the school, Ethan thought about the lessons he'd learned from Lily's case. Every child deserved to be seen, to be heard, to be protected. And sometimes the most important part of his job wasn't chasing criminals or writing reports. It was simply paying attention when someone needed help but couldn't ask for it directly. The little girl by the fence looked up as he approached. In her eyes, Ethan saw the same mixture of fear and hope he'd seen in Lily's eyes that day in the grocery store. Hi there, he said gently, crouching down to her level. I'm Officer Morales. I noticed you were waiting here by yourself. Is everything okay? The girl looked around nervously, then back at Ethan. In a whisper so quiet he had to lean in to hear her, she said, I was hoping someone would see me. Ethan smiled reassuringly. Well, I see you now, and we're going to make sure you're safe. As backup arrived and the proper procedures began, Ethan realized that his story with Lily Monroe hadn't really ended that day in the CPS office. It had become the beginning of a new understanding of his role as a police officer, a new awareness of how many silent signals were being sent every day by people who needed help but couldn't ask for it directly. In the distance, a yellow school bus pulled away from the curb and through one of the windows. Ethan caught a glimpse of blonde pigtails and a pink backpack. Lily Monroe was going home to her mother, safe and loved, carrying Mr. Buttons in her backpack and stories of her day in her heart. Sometimes the most important cases weren't the dramatic ones that made headlines. Sometimes they were the quiet ones, the subtle ones, the ones that required nothing more than paying attention and caring enough to act. Sometimes a single gesture could change everything. And sometimes the person who did the saving found out they needed saving too.